For a decade, we've watched the saga of Jenny and Sumit, a story of forbidden love, cultural clashes, and a seemingly endless battle against the clock. Jenny's visa was more than a document. It was a character in their story, a ticking time bomb that always, miraculously, got defused at the last possible second. We saw the tears, the anxiety, the desperate calls to lawyers. We saw Sumit, ever the worried partner, scrambling to find a solution. A tourist visa extension here, a COVID-era reprieve there. We chalked it up to the slow-moving wheels of Indian bureaucracy, a bit of television drama, or just plain dumb luck. But what if it wasn't luck? What if every tear, every panicked phone call, every last-minute save was a carefully orchestrated piece of theater? What if the solution to Jenny's visa problems wasn't found in a government office, but in a dusty back alley, paid for in cash? What if her miracle was a crime? This is a story that goes deeper than anything you've seen on television. This is a story about a hidden world of fixers, lies, and a level of manipulation so profound it will change the way you see their entire relationship. If you're ready to uncover the truth that's been hiding in plain sight, if you believe that something about their story never quite added up, then do me a favor. Hit that like button right now and make sure you're subscribed with all notifications turned on, because the investigation we're about to reveal could not only end their time on television, it could end their time together forever. To understand the magnitude of what we've uncovered, you first have to appreciate the public narrative, the story we were all sold, season after season. It was a simple, romantic, yet tragic premise. An American woman, Jenny, deeply in love with a much younger Indian man, Sumit. The primary obstacle, besides his disapproving family, was the Indian government itself. Jenny, being a foreign national with no legal right to permanent residency through work or ancestry, was trapped in a perpetual cycle of short-term tourist visas. Each visa came with a strict expiration date, a deadline that loomed over their relationship like a guillotine. The show masterfully used this as a source of constant, recurring drama. Every few episodes, we'd be treated to the same narrative arc. Jenny's time is running out. They have 90 days, 30 days left. Panic sets in. They explore their options. They talk to an immigration lawyer who, conveniently for the cameras, lays out the bleak reality of their situation. The options were always limited and seemingly impossible. Marriage was the obvious answer, the one that would grant Jenny a spouse visa and a path to stability. But Sumit, for a laundry list of reasons we'll dissect later, always had an excuse. His parents, his divorce, his fear, the stars not being aligned, you name it. So, marriage was off the table. What else? They explored increasingly desperate and frankly absurd avenues. Remember the missionary visa? Jenny, a woman with no discernible connection to proselytizing, was suddenly going to dedicate her life to a religious cause to stay in the country. It was a plot point so flimsy it was almost comical. And predictably, it failed. Then there was the idea of her joining the Hare Krishna movement. Again, a sudden out-of-character pivot towards religious devotion as a last-ditch immigration strategy. It felt like they were throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what would stick, all while the clock was ticking down. And then, at the 11th hour, a miracle. A visa extension would be granted. Or the government would announce a blanket extension for foreigners due to the pandemic. Or some other bureaucratic loophole would conveniently appear, saving the day and resetting the clock for the next season's drama. Sumit would breathe a sigh of relief, Jenny would cry with gratitude, and the audience would feel the catharsis of a crisis averted. We were conditioned to accept this cycle as their reality. We were led to believe that Sumit was a man trapped, fighting a losing battle against an inflexible system, moving mountains just to get his love a few more months in his country. He was portrayed as the hero, the one tirelessly working behind the scenes, making the calls, pulling the strings he could. Jenny, in turn, was the damsel in distress, completely dependent on his efforts, her fate in India resting solely in his hands. This dynamic was the bedrock of their storyline. His struggle, her dependency, his efforts, her gratitude. But the truth, as our investigation suggests, is far more sinister. The foundation of their story isn't love against bureaucracy, it's control through calculated deception. Our journey into this story began not on a television screen, but with a cryptic email. It came from an anonymous source, someone claiming to have worked in the periphery of Delhi's vast and often shadowy expatriate services industry. The email was short, but its contents were explosive. It didn't mention names at first, but it spoke of a well-known visa consultant in Nehru Place, a man famous among certain circles not for his knowledge of the law, but for his ability to bend it. This man, the email alleged, had a specialty: keeping foreign nationals in the country long after their legal welcome had expired. He did it for businessmen, for students who had overstayed, and, as the source claimed, for reality TV personalities who need their storyline to continue. The email ended with a single tantalizing sentence. Ask about the old American lady and her TV boyfriend. He is the fixer's best customer. That was the tip. It was vague, unsubstantiated, but it was enough. We knew we had to follow it. We dispatched an investigative journalist, a seasoned local reporter we'll call Rohan, to dive into this world. Rohan's task was to find this fixer, this ghost in the machine who could seemingly make immigration problems disappear. Finding him wasn't easy. Men like this don't advertise on billboards or have polished websites. They operate on word of mouth, in a network of whispers and backroom introductions. Rohan spent weeks in Delhi's expat bars, in online forums, and in the tea stalls frequented by the runners and agents who haunt the periphery of government buildings. He heard the name Mr. Sharma mentioned in hushed tones, not a specific Sharma, but a Sharma, a man who could grease the wheels, a man who had friends in high places, a man who specialized in creative documentation. After weeks of dead ends and false starts, a contact finally gave Rohan a phone number and a location, a small third-floor office in a nondescript building, sandwiched between a mobile phone repair shop and a travel agency. There was no sign on the door, just a faded number. This was the place. The plan was simple, and a classic of investigative journalism. Rohan would go in with a hidden camera, a tiny lens concealed in a button on his shirt. His cover story was plausible. He had an elderly Canadian uncle who had come to India for spiritual reasons, had overstayed his visa, and was now facing deportation. Rohan was desperate to keep him in the country, and he was willing to pay. The office was exactly as you'd imagine, cramped, dimly lit, with stacks of yellowing files threatening to topple over. A single ancient ceiling fan wobbled precariously, doing little to stir the thick, humid air. Behind a large cluttered desk sat Mr. Sharma. He was a man in his late 50s, with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He listened patiently as Rohan laid out his fabricated story, nodding, steepling his fingers, assessing his new potential client. Deportation, Sharma said with a dismissive wave of his hand after Rohan had finished. This is a word used to scare people. In reality, everything is a negotiation. Every problem has a price. Rohan, playing his part, expressed skepticism. But the Foreigners Regional Registration Office, the FRO, sent a letter. It's official. They say he has to leave. Sharma leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. This was the moment. This was his sales pitch. The FRO is made of people. The ministry is made of people. And people, he said, leaning forward and lowering his voice, people can be reasonable. You think the official channels are the only channels? That is the mistake everyone makes. He then explained his process. It wasn't about filing appeals or pleading for mercy. It was about misplacing the right file at the right time. It was about a crucial signature appearing on a document that was previously denied. It was about a special processing fee paid directly to a friend who works in the records department, a friend who can ensure a deportation order gets buried under a mountain of other paperwork until it's forgotten. It is an art, Sharma boasted. You are not paying for a service. You are paying for my art, for my contacts. Rohan pressed him, feigning nervousness. Is this safe? Have you done this for others? I need to know it works. Sharma let out a short, sharp laugh. He clearly enjoyed talking about his successes. My friend, I have clients you would not believe. Big shots, businessmen, even celebrities. He paused for dramatic effect, looking Rohan dead in the eye. You watch that American TV show? About the foreigners and the Indians? There is a couple. You must know them. The old American lady and the young boy. The one who was married before. Rohan's heart must have been pounding, but he kept his composure. I think I know who you mean, Sharma beamed, his chest puffing out with pride. They are my best clients. Her visa is a masterpiece of my work. For years, every time the TV people need some drama. Oh, Jenny has to leave in 30 days. He calls me. The whole thing is a show for the cameras. He knows, I know. The hidden camera was rolling, capturing every word. Sharma, caught up in his own ego, continued to spill the details. He calls me, he says, Sharma ji, we need another crisis. So we let the deadline get close. Let her cry, let him look worried on TV. It is good for their story. Then, a few days before she's supposed to leave, he brings me the money. I make one phone call to my friend at the ministry. The file gets re-evaluated. A special discretionary extension is granted for humanitarian reasons. A stamp appears, problem solved. She gets another 6 months. He is the hero who saved her, and I get a nice payment. Everyone is happy. He even mentioned the specific excuses they used. Sometimes we say she has a minor medical issue and is unfit to travel. Easy to get a doctor's note for that. Sometimes we say there is a new application under review, which allows her to stay while it is processed, even if we know the application will be denied. The key is to always have something in process. It keeps the system confused. It buys time, and time is what they are paying for. This wasn't just a confession. It was a complete dismantling of the entire Sumit and Jenny narrative. Every visa crisis, every tearful goodbye that never happened, every desperate search for a legal loophole. It was all a sham. A manufactured drama co-written by Sumit and his black market fixer. Sumit was never worried. He was never scrambling. While Jenny was having sleepless nights, terrified of being torn away from the man she loved, Sumit had an illegal ace up his sleeve the entire time. He wasn't a victim of the system. He was actively and criminally manipulating it. This revelation reframes everything. Think back to all those scenes. Remember Sumit's demeanor during these crises. Was he ever truly panicked, or was he just performing with concern? Watch the old clips again with this new knowledge. His furrowed brow, his worried sighs, they now look like the calculated performance of a man who knows the outcome is already guaranteed. He's not an actor in a tragedy. He's the director of a thriller where he's already written the final scene. But the most disturbing part of this is not the fraud committed against the Indian government or the deception of the television audience. It's the psychological manipulation of Jenny. This wasn't just about keeping her in the country. It was a sophisticated, long-term form of control. By constantly manufacturing a precarious, unstable environment, Sumit ensured that Jenny was always in a state of dependency. He was the sole gatekeeper to her life in India. Her existence there was not a right, but a gift that he, and only he, could bestow upon her every few months. She was made to feel perpetually grateful for every miracle he arranged, for every last-minute reprieve. He wasn't just her partner, he was her savior. This dynamic stripped her of any agency. How could she ever truly challenge him, argue with him, or even leave him when he held the power to have her deported? He controlled her emotionally by making her believe her dream was always on the verge of collapse. And he controlled her legally by being the one to pull it back from the brink. The threat of her visa expiring was the ultimate weapon in his arsenal. It kept her compliant, it kept her grateful, and it kept her tied to him in a way that went far beyond love or companionship. It was a form of coercion, played out over a decade on international television. We saw Jenny grow older, further away from her life and family in America, her entire world shrinking until it consisted of one man in one country where her presence was, as she was led to believe, completely conditional. He wasn't just her lover, he had, through this alleged criminal conspiracy, effectively become her warden, a warden who convinced his prisoner to be grateful for the prison he had built around her. The confession from Mr. Sharma doesn't just suggest a crime was committed. It paints a portrait of a master manipulator who exploited the love and trust of his partner for control. He wasn't fighting for their love against the odds. He was creating the odds, fixing the game, and making Jenny thank him for letting her play. The very foundation of their story, the one that captivated millions, is not one of romance. It's a dark, twisted tale of a long con, where the prize was not just a life together, but absolute power over it. Every tear Jenny shed over her visa was based on a lie. Every moment of relief was a response to a manufactured crisis. And every declaration of love from Sumit must now be re-examined through the lens of this profound betrayal. The visa was never the problem, it was the tool. It was the chain he used to bind her to him, a chain cleverly disguised as a lifeline. This illegal solution, this creative fix, allowed Sumit to delay marriage for years. Think about it. Why would he need to marry her and face the full, unadulterated wrath of his parents, when he could keep her in the country indefinitely using his fixer? The visa issue was the perfect excuse. It allowed him to say, "I want to marry you, baby, but we have to solve this visa problem first." It was a perpetual stalling tactic. He could maintain his relationship with Jenny, keep her in his home, while simultaneously placating his parents by not making the union official. He was living a double life, not just with his first wife, as we learned in the beginning, but with everyone. He was playing a game with the Indian government, with the show's producers, with his family, and most cruelly, with Jenny herself. The visa guy gave him the power to have it all, his girlfriend in his bed, and his parents kept at bay. The cost was Jenny's peace of mind and potentially both of their futures. The scope of this deception is breathtaking. For 10 years, we have been watching a carefully constructed illusion. Sumit's parents' disapproval was real, but it was also a convenient cover. Behind the shield of family drama, Sumit was allegedly engaged in a criminal conspiracy that made the family issue secondary. He never had to truly confront them and make a final choice, because he had an escape hatch. He had Mr. Sharma. He could postpone the ultimate decision, the finality of marriage, forever, as long as he could keep paying the fixer's fees. And where did that money come from? Was it from his call center job? Or was the paycheck from the television show? The money earned by broadcasting their struggle being funneled directly into the criminal enterprise that perpetuated the struggle in the first place? It's a sickeningly circular piece of logic. The drama pays for the crime, and the crime creates the drama. It's the perfect reality TV feedback loop, a snake eating its own tail, with Jenny's life and legal status trapped in the middle. We are not just talking about a little white lie. We are talking about a potential felony, bribery of a public official, visa fraud, forgery. These are serious crimes in India, as they are in any country. And this wasn't a one-time offense. Sharma's boast, "They are my best clients," implies a pattern, a series of illegal transactions stretching back for years. Each extension Jenny received, each miracle that allowed her to stay, may correspond to a cash payment, a backroom deal, another felony committed. The entire decade of their relationship as we know it could be built upon a foundation of repeated calculated criminal acts orchestrated by Sumit. He wasn't just catfishing her at the beginning. He may have been criminally deceiving her and the authorities for the entire duration of their relationship. The man who cried and begged his parents for acceptance was, in the shadows, a man who allegedly paid off government contacts to maintain his preferred lifestyle. The narrative is broken. The hero is a potential villain. And the love story might be the most tragic catfish of all. Let's take a moment to process the sheer gravity of Mr. Sharma's confession. This isn't just a minor rule bending or a white lie to expedite some paperwork. If his claims are true, this is a detailed blueprint of a long-term criminal conspiracy. The potential consequences are not a slap on the wrist or a fine. They are life-altering, a domino effect of legal and personal ruin that would bring their entire world crashing down. The first domino to fall would be Mr. Sharma himself. The moment our hypothetical journalist, Rohan, publishes his investigation, complete with the hidden camera footage, the pressure on Indian authorities would be immense. The story would be picked up by local news, then national, then international outlets. A public official in Delhi was taking bribes to falsify visa documents for a famous American reality TV star. The scandal would be too big to ignore. The Central Bureau of Investigation, India's equivalent of the FBI, or at the very least, the Delhi Police's vigilance branch, would be forced to act. Sharma would be arrested. His office would be raided, his files seized, his computers and phones confiscated. And a man like Sharma, a career fixer whose entire business is built on leverage and secrets, would not go down alone. His phone records would be a roadmap to corruption, leading directly to his friend at the ministry. That official, or officials, would be next. They would face charges under India's Prevention of Corruption Act, a stringent law that could lead to years in prison and the forfeiture of all their assets. It would trigger a full-blown internal affairs investigation, a witch hunt within the ministry to root out anyone connected to Sharma's network. But for us, the real focus is on the second call Sharma would make after being arrested, the one to his lawyer. And the first name he would give that lawyer would be Sumit Singh. Sumit would be identified not just as a client, but as a co-conspirator. Under Indian law, it's not just the person accepting the bribe who is guilty. The person giving the bribe is equally culpable. Sumit wouldn't be a witness. He'd be a primary target of the investigation. The charges against him would be severe and numerous. First, there's the bribery itself. Each payment made to Sharma that was then passed on to the official constitutes a separate criminal act. Then there's fraud and cheating under Section 420 of the Indian Penal Code for intentionally deceiving a government body to secure a benefit, in this case, the visa extensions. There would likely be charges of forgery for the creation of false documents, like the bogus doctor's notes or the sham applications Sharma mentioned. and tying it all together would be the most serious charge: criminal conspiracy. The prosecution's case would be simple and damning. Sumit Singh, over a period of many years, willfully and repeatedly engaged in a criminal scheme with a known fixer to bribe public officials to circumvent immigration laws and fraudulently secure visa extensions for his foreign partner, Jenny Slatten. The evidence would be Sharma's testimony, his records, and potentially banking transactions or phone logs connecting him to Sumit around the dates of each visa renewal. Sumit's carefully crafted image as the devoted, struggling lover would evaporate, replaced by the portrait of a common criminal. He would face the grim reality of the Indian justice system, a system not known for its speed or leniency in corruption cases. The potential penalty? Not a fine. We are talking about significant jail time. Years. His life as he knows it would be over. And what about Jenny? This is where the story turns from a crime thriller into a profound tragedy. In the eyes of the law, her knowledge of the scheme would be a key question. Did she know? Did she have any idea that Sumit was paying bribes? Based on her on-screen behavior, her genuine distress and anxiety, it seems highly probable that she was kept completely in the dark, a pawn in Sumit's game. But legally, it might not matter. Whether she was a willing participant or an unwitting victim, the fact remains, her legal status in India would be based on fraud. Every visa stamp in her passport after her initial tourist visa would be deemed null and void, the product of a criminal act. The Indian government would have no choice but to cancel her current visa immediately. She would be served a deportation order, and this time, there would be no last-minute call to Mr. Sharma to make it go away. This time, it would be real. She would be given a few days, perhaps a week, to pack a decade of her life into a few suitcases and be escorted to the airport. But it would be worse than a simple deportation. She would almost certainly be blacklisted, barred from re-entering India for a minimum of 5 years, potentially for life. The country that had become her home, the place where she had invested all her love, time, and money, would be closed to her forever. The cruelest irony is that the very criminal conspiracy Sumit allegedly created to keep her from being deported would become the direct and irreversible cause of her permanent deportation. The illegal solution that was supposed to save their relationship would be the thing that guaranteed its physical end. She would be sent back to America, a woman in her late 60s, with her life in India in ruins, her partner in jail, and her name associated with a major international scandal. The future she fought for, cried for, and sacrificed for would be snatched away, not by bureaucracy or bad luck, but by the very man who promised to protect it. That is the judgment, not just a TV cliffhanger, but a real-world cataclysm of arrests, trials, imprisonment, and permanent separation. The illegal ace up Sumit's sleeve was never a winning card. It was a time bomb, and the publication of this expose would be the spark that lights the fuse. Now, with the chilling clarity of this new theory, let's go back. Let's re-examine the history of their relationship as it was presented to us, and see how the fixer theory doesn't just fit the narrative. It explains the parts that never made sense. Think about all those meetings with immigration lawyers. They were a recurring motif in their story. Sumit and Jenny would sit in a sterile office, the camera focused on their anxious faces, as a legal expert patiently explained the impossible. Marriage is the only permanent option, the lawyer would say. A tourist visa cannot be extended indefinitely. Sumit would nod gravely, asking questions he likely already knew the answers to. Are there any other options? Any special visas? The lawyer would shake his head, and the scene would end with Jenny on the verge of tears. We were led to believe these were genuine consultations. But were they? With the fixer theory in mind, these scenes transform into pure performance art. Sumit wasn't seeking legal advice. He was gathering footage for the show. He was creating a paper trail of due diligence to make their struggle appear legitimate. He could sit there and listen to the lawyer explain the law, all the while knowing he had an illegal, off-the-books solution waiting for him. These meetings were a farce, a charade for the cameras to reinforce the very problem he had already solved criminally. He was playing the part of the concerned boyfriend, while the real solution wasn't in a law book, but in a cash-filled envelope. And what about the other solutions they explored? The missionary visa, the Har Krishna angle, these were always presented as desperate last-ditch efforts. But look at them now. They seem utterly absurd, like plot devices from a bad sitcom. Jenny, a woman who had shown no prior inclination towards religious asceticism, was suddenly going to devote her life to a spiritual movement to get a visa. It was never believable because it was never real. These were narrative red herrings, designed to fill screen time and make it look like they were exploring every possible avenue. Sumit could propose these outlandish schemes knowing they would fail. It made him look proactive and creative, while buying him time and generating more drama for the show. He could send Jenny off to meet with temple leaders or religious officials, a wild goose chase that kept her occupied and stressed, reinforcing her dependence on him, while he knew, with a single phone call to Sharma, that her stay was already secure. These weren't plans, they were distractions. They were chapters in the fictional story he was writing for the audience and, most tragically, for Jenny herself. He was the puppet master, and the Indian legal and religious systems were merely props in his show. Now, let's talk about the most crucial plot point of their entire saga, the wedding. After a decade of delays, excuses, and manufactured crises, they finally got married. On the surface, this seems to contradict the fixer theory. If Sumit had a foolproof, illegal way to keep Jenny in the country, why would he ever get married and finally face the epic confrontation with his parents that he had been avoiding for years? The wedding seems like an act of love and finality that the cynical fixer theory can't explain, but it can. In fact, the fixer theory provides several cold, calculated reasons for the marriage that have nothing to do with romance. The first and most plausible reason is that the illegal well was running dry. A criminal enterprise like the one Sharma described is inherently unstable. It relies on a network of corrupt individuals who can be transferred, retire, or get arrested at any moment. Perhaps Sharma's friend at the ministry was moved to a different department. Perhaps a new, unbribable supervisor was put in charge. Or perhaps, in the wake of other corruption scandals, the ministry had tightened its internal controls, making the old tricks too risky. The price might have gone up. Sharma might have gotten greedy. The illegal route, once a reliable convenience, may have become too expensive or too dangerous to sustain. Marriage, then, wasn't a choice born of love, but a strategic pivot. It was Sumit's Plan B, enacted only when Plan A, the criminal plan, was no longer viable. He didn't marry Jenny because he finally wanted to. He married her because he had to. It was the only option left to keep her in the country and, by extension, to keep the show and his income going. Another possibility is pressure from the network and the producers. Let's be realistic. A reality TV storyline cannot remain static forever. The Will Jenny's visa be extended plot had been their central conflict for the better part of a decade. Audiences were growing tired of it. The drama was becoming repetitive. For the show to continue, for their story to evolve, something had to change. A wedding was the ultimate narrative payoff, the climax that had been teased for years. It's entirely possible that the producers issued an ultimatum: either get married and provide a new storyline, life as a married couple, the continued family drama, or your story is over. Faced with the end of his television career and the income that came with it, marriage became a professional necessity for Sumit. It was a business decision, a way to secure another season, another paycheck. The tears at the ceremony might have been real, but the motivation behind it could have been rooted in contracts and ratings, not love and commitment. Finally, there's the possibility of pressure from Jenny herself. Imagine being in her shoes. For 10 years, you've lived in a state of perpetual uncertainty. Your life is a constant series of 90-day countdowns. You've given up your family, your country, your financial security. You've endured lies, a secret first marriage, and the relentless hostility of your partner's family. At some point, even the most patient and loving person would reach a breaking point. Jenny may have finally put her foot down. No more extensions, no more temporary fixes. She may have delivered an ultimatum of her own. Marry me, or I'm going home for good. Faced with the prospect of losing her, Sumit may have been forced to play his final card. The marriage wasn't him finally choosing her over his parents. It was him being backed into a corner, his manipulative games no longer effective against a woman who had nothing left to lose. In any of these scenarios, the wedding is not the romantic fairy tale ending it was presented as. It's a calculated move, a final option when all other avenues of control and delay have been exhausted. It reframes their wedding photos not as monuments to enduring love, but as evidence of a failed strategy. This brings us to the most uncomfortable question of all. Was Jenny a willing participant? Was she in on the scam? It's a question we must consider, but based on the evidence available, it seems incredibly unlikely. She appeared to be the one suffering the most from the constant uncertainty. Her anxiety, her tears, her desperation, they always felt raw and authentic. It's far more likely that she was the primary victim of the deception. Consider her situation. She was in a foreign country, isolated from her own support system. She didn't speak the language fluently. She had limited understanding of the labyrinthine Indian bureaucracy. She was completely reliant on Sumit for information, for translation, for everything. He was her only link to navigating this alien world. When he told her the visa situation was dire, why would she doubt him? When he miraculously produced an extension at the last minute, why would she question it? She would be flooded with relief and gratitude. He was her hero, her savior. She was trapped in a classic cycle of manipulation, where the manipulator creates a problem and then earns praise for solving it. Her gratitude, her love, her dependency, all of it was cultivated and reinforced by this manufactured cycle of crisis and resolution. To even consider that Sumit was lying on such a fundamental level would have been to admit that her entire life in India was a sham, that the man she sacrificed everything for was a fraud. That level of cognitive dissonance is almost impossible to maintain. It is far easier, far safer psychologically to believe in the miracle, to believe in the hero. So she believed. And with every extension, the lie grew deeper, and the cage he had built around her became more secure. Her miracle was a crime. Her visa was a lie. The love story that millions of people watched was potentially one of the most elaborate and cruel deceptions ever broadcast on television. The question now is not just what the legal system will do, but what we, the audience, will do with this information. How can we ever watch them again in the same way? The story is no longer about whether his parents will accept her. It's about whether she can accept that her entire reality may have been built on a criminal enterprise designed to control her. How far would you go to stay with the one you love? And what would you do if you found out your love was a cage, and the man holding the key was not your savior, but your jailer? Let us know what you think in the comments. This story is still developing, and the fallout from this investigation is only just beginning. Make sure you are subscribed for updates. You won't want to miss what happens next.